Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're tackling, well, a big one. We're diving deep into the story of democracy in government in Bangladesh, really drawing on the sources you've put in front of us.
Yeah, and the goal, I think, is to really sift through this material to understand the path Bangladesh has walked, since its beginning.
Looking at that gap, right, between the democratic ideals it was founded on.
And the reality that's described in these pages today, there's often a gap.
It's a story that starts with, well, immense struggle. The history laid out here, it reminds you Bangladesh didn't just appear.
No, definitely not.
It was forged in this powerful fight for fundamental rights, language, political voice, basic human dignity. That deep-rooted fight for, say, in their own destiny.
Yeah,
That seems absolutely key.
absolutely. It shapes everything that follows. And when you look at the period right after independence, back in 1971, the aspiration was pretty clear.
Right.
Bangladesh set itself up as a parliamentary democracy.
The vision was simple then, wasn't it? Ruled by the people.
Exactly.
A system where the government genuinely represented the citizens who just fought so incredibly hard for their freedom.
But, well, as this material makes very clear, that initial dream, it faced challenges almost immediately.
Yeah, it wasn't a smooth road at all, was it? To stable democracy.
Not really.
You see a history marked by real turmoil, military coups,
Political assassinations, tragically.
significant stretches under autocratic rule. I mean,
Right.
this journey's been anything but easy.
And then you get to the early 1990s. A
Yeah.
pivotal moment,
Big protests, right?
widespread protests across the country, yeah. And they ultimately led to the end of that period of autocracy.
That really must have felt like a turning point. It ushered in the return of multi-party elections.
A new beginning, perhaps?
Maybe. But the question posed in the sources here is really insightful, I think. Was this truly a fundamental shift, towards a deeper democracy?
Or was it maybe just a different version of the same power game, just changing the structure a bit?
Exactly, which
Yeah.
kind of brings us more towards the present day.
Right. And on the surface, you look today, the formal structures of democracy, they are in place.
You've got elections being held,
Uh-huh.
multiple political parties operating.
Yep.
And there's a constitution that spells out rights and freedoms for citizens?
Mm-hmm.
On paper, anyway.
But the material immediately pushes back on that, doesn't it? It asks, is simply having these formal elements enough? Does that equal real democracy?
And that's where these concerns, the ones voiced in the sources, they become critical. You see frequent claims from opposition voices about, well, being suppressed.
And it's not just them. Civil society groups, they're consistently raising red flags.
On specific things.
Yeah, specific fronts, challenges to press freedom, for instance. Big questions about the independence of the judiciary. And significant issues around the fairness of the electoral processes themselves.
So it creates this feeling, described here, that for many people, democracy feels more like a ritual.
Kind of. You have elections every 5 years, tick the box.
But without that sense of genuine day-to-day representation or meaningful accountability from those in power.
Right. And part of that feeling, it seems tied to the intensely adversarial nature of the politics there.
That's a crucial point you raised from the sources.
Yeah, it really is. When the relationship between the ruling party and the opposition parties is framed as one of, enemies.
Rather than just rivals with different ideas.
Exactly. It fundamentally changes how governance works. It becomes less about public service.
And more, as the material suggests, like a constant battlefield.
A battlefield, yeah. That's a good way to put it.
But this deep dive, it isn't just about the government or the formal rules, is it?
No, not all.
There's a powerful theme running through this material about the indispensable role of the people themselves.
Absolutely. Democracy, as it's presented here, it's much broader than just what happens in parliament or the courts.
It's also profoundly about the citizens.
Yes. Their participation, their awareness, their willingness to actually engage and sometimes show courage.
And the sources really challenge the listener here, don't they? They kind of prompt us to turn the mirror on ourselves.
They do. It asks things like, are we asking the difficult questions? Do we challenge our leaders when it's necessary, or do we tend to just, follow along blindly sometimes?
And when we vote, are we really looking closely at policies? Or are we swayed more by personalities, by the noise?
Because the core message seems to be that in a robust, living democracy, the people aren't just passive. They don't just cast a vote now and then.
They actively hold the power. That's the ideal there.
That's the ideal. Yet despite all these significant challenges and the difficult journey described, the picture isn't painted entirely without hope.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
There are real reasons for optimism highlighted here.
Like what?
Well, Bangladesh has this very young, dynamic population. That's a huge asset.
Right.
A booming digital presence, too, connecting people in new ways. And there's a discernible rise in sort of civil awareness and engagement.
These are definitely powerful forces for potential change.
Yeah. And you see examples of what the source calls democracy in motion.
Okay.
Like students leading protest movements on issues they care about, journalists pushing boundaries, challenging official narratives, even when it's risky, and communities mobilizing, demanding justice on specific local issues. These are concrete signs, aren't they? Citizens exercising their agency.
They are. But this material also concludes that while passion is important, moving forward needs something maybe even more fundamental.
Which is?
Responsibility.
Right. Responsibility.
It really highlights the need for responsibility at all levels. From the leaders who govern, obviously.
From the institutions meant to uphold the system.
Crucially, yes. And critically, from the people themselves in their role as active citizens, not just passive subjects.
So if we look back at the sources you've provided, the overall picture isn't really one of a failed democracy.
No, I wouldn't say failed. Struggling seems more accurate based on this.
A struggling one. The foundational principles, that historical will for self-determination we talked about at the start, that seems clearly there.
The foundation and the will, yes. And the path forward, as it's outlined here, it seems to require, well, genuine sincerity from leaders.
And concrete accountability from institutions, not just lip service.
Exactly. And maybe most importantly, a broad, honest national conversation about the kind of democratic future Bangladesh truly aspires to build.
Which brings us, I think, to the powerful closing thought from this material. Something for you, the listener, to really mull over.
Yeah.
Democracy isn't just a system you install, like software or read about in a book. It's a culture, something you have to actively nurture.
A living thing.
Right. So building on the strengths we've seen and addressing the challenges discussed from these sources today, how do you nurture that democratic culture in practice? How do you activate the real power of the people beyond just those formal structures?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? How do you make it real every day?